صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من جاء بالحسنة فله خير منها وهم من فزع يومئذ آمنون. ومن جاء بالسيئة فكبت وجوههم في النار هل تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إنما أمرت أن أعبد رب هذه البلدة إنما أمرت أن أعبد رب هذه البلدة الذي حرمها وله كل شيء وأمرت أن أكون من المسلمين وأن أتلو القرآن فمن اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فقل إنما أنا من المنذرين. وقل الحمد لله سيريكم آياته فتعرفونها وما ربك بغافل عما تعملون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. اللهم صل على
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Welcome to the Islamic House of Wisdom nightly Ramadan program. Excuse me. I want to thank you for being with us whether here in person or online, and only a few days left of this holy month. If you still have some spiritual business to take care of, these are the few days that are left. One thing I know for sure is that the Eid is next week. When, I don't know, but I know that for sure it's next week. So we only have a few days left. And with us today, we have a special guest to share a few thoughts with us, and that would be Dr. Firas Hamade. فليتفضل مسحوبا بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. All praise is due to Allah, the master of the day of the judgment, the creator of the universe. And peace be upon his chosen messengers, the prophets of Allah, especially their seal of Prophet Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وآل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. Our topic tonight is so special. It's about the Fitrah, or the innate human nature, which is very important. And this is a ubiquitous concept that goes across all human communities and different cultures and religions. So we'll be tackling this fine subject, and we will look at it from different angles. We're not going to concentrate on the psychological aspect or the anthropological aspect. However, we'll be concentrating on the religious and spiritual dimension of it. So, in order to start doing that, we'll start with the verse from the Holy Quran. I will say it in Arabic, and then I will translate. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Then turn your face up toward the religion. It's the creation of your Lord. It's the creation of Allah that won't be altered or changed. But, however, the majority of human beings do not know that. So, what is the Quran is talking about specifically? So, from the linguistic part of it, the Futra is the creation, a creation without a precedent. And when you talk about Futra, all those terms come to you: the inbred, the inborn, the natural, etc. A few other terms that I have here. Also, you have the temperamental built-in, specifically that built-in. So what is built-in in a human being? What is specifically built-in the human being? So there are many characteristics that constitute our temper, but Allah had built in the love, for example, for benevolence. Allah had built in us the love for goodness. Even if we don't specify intellectually what is good and what is bad. But how you distinguish really what is the Fitrah or what is built in us? is from the moral perspective. And this is very important. Behold with me and just please bear with me a little bit. So I need to explain this. If you talk to any human being on the earth and you explain one idea which is ultimate good and another idea which is ultimate evil or which is evil, that human being has the capacity built in his brain to process that information and to have the inclination and the influence by the good idea, and inside himself an intrinsic feeling, he will feel that he has to strive for that good, for the idea that represents the good, and forbid the evil. And this is across all human beings, regardless. But now how that built-in love for the goodness can get deformed or distorted. It can be done by many ways, but first by wrongdoing that will affect the inbuilt characteristic of inclination for the goodness, or the culture sometimes affect that, and the passions and desires. If we have some desire for something, it may alter that built-in Fitrah, the thought of goodness in us. And so what we arrive to the idea that at the core of the emergence of religion is that the innate matter inherent in the soul of a person that does not differ backward, as evident from the words of the I will continue, of course, from the psychological aspect or dimension of it. As you know, the Fitrah encompasses the instant, what we call instant. So that instant, there is an instant, we have some instinct for food, right? And then even we share that instinct with animals. We have the instinct we have the instinct for survival. In psychology, we call this fight or flight. We always have the tendency of escaping the matters that are fearful to us. But our focus will be on that group of things that were and still are known in the name of a humanity that is inherent in man and not acquired, and it's close to consciousness. So again, the Fitrah are those characteristics that are not inherited, that are inherited but they are not acquired. That's basically what we mean by Fitrah. So let us explore that universal concept, how it is universal among the human family. How? We're going to prove that. So those aspects of it are among all the human family, and I will go back a little bit in history with that timeline till nowadays. But the 7 or 8 proofs that I have are the following, and I'm going to talk about those 7 points. So, the Fitrah in believing in causality. This is a bit philosophical, but I will elaborate on this part. And then that's the first point. The second point is the Fitrah in believing in intentionality. And then the third is the Fitrah of acquiring distinction between the absolute good from the absolute bad. In the Islamic theology, we call it al-hasan wal-qubh al-aqliyain, the rational good and evil. But here I used another term, it's the absolute good, and what is the absolute and not relative evil, and the absolute good and not relative good. We're going to talk about this point. So number 4, the human family has a fitrah in believing in the sublime being and that supreme being. And this is interesting. We're going to talk about and elaborate about this point. This means that even pagans have that fitrah of believing in the oneness of God. And I'm gonna prove that. I'm gonna talk about it, how it is. And then number 5, the fitrah of worshiping, how that is built in ourselves, is intrinsic to us, the fitrah of worshiping. And then I have the building houses for worship, and 7 is the seeking of justice through religion and religious authorities. This is common across all the communities in the world since the earlier dawn of civilizations. We're going to elaborate a little bit on that part. And finally, it's the fitrah and the yearning toward immorality. So when we talk about this point, we're going to talk about the hereafter and how the population had dealt with that subject throughout the history. So I'm going to try to be precise and concise about those 7 points. And I will start with the 7, the belief in high or sublime being and in sublime authority and in a superior being. So you may tell me there were pagans all over the world and they can believe in a lot of gods. However, for example, if you take the Indian community or the Indian civilization, they have many gods, right? But at the end, the God of God, that supreme authority, is Shiva. Now, for the Romans, it's Jupiter, right? So, and you come to the Greek also, from ancient Greek, you have Zeus, God of gods. Even for in Mesopotamia, for the Sumerians, you have Anu, who is the Lord of constellations. Now, if you come to the Quran, for example, Arabs in Jahiliyyah had Hubal. Hubal was the god there. But the Quran mentioned, so there were other gods, but the supreme god was Hubal, and part of the Arabs at that time were believing in Allah. And the Quran say, if سألتهم من خلقهم ليقولون الله فأنا يؤفكون. If you ask them who had created you, they would reply, it's Allah. Those are parts in the Jahiliyyah before Islam, some people. And other people say, we're saying about other gods like Hubal and other gods, Suwa, Wud, wa Nisra. They would say, ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى, means we worship them as intercessors. So they were like the means between the divinity and the creation. So at that point, this is they would believe in those. Of course, what is not of the Futra is the type of worship people were doing. So some people were worshiping the stars. They have that cult of worshiping the stars or the fire, right? And then some other were sacrificing, had that cult of sacrificing. So you would see the Greek would give Poseidon, the god of the sea, would sacrifice with for example, a young girl and give her to the sea. Other population, even the Inca, for example, if you have visited Niagara Falls, the natives there, the Native Americans were given to the god of the falls, were throwing a young girl. and so on. If you know that a famous girl that it was found 500. It was a throne at the Andes Mountains as a cult of sacrifice by the Inca people, and that teenager was the girl was 15 years old. Then they found her mummy not long time ago, and that mummy, it's amazing. It looks like as a kind of a fresh. So those practices are not of the Fitrah, but those are of the confusion of the people, and they are cultural, and then also they are due to the lack of understanding of the how to worship. So now, what is really important is to understand is the Futra, the need of worshiping, and a need to worship a sublime being that provided us our existence and our sustenance. This is universal, is common among all human beings. However, the how to worship, we don't know it as a built-in or as an innate or as a fitrah. We don't know it a priori. We don't know it beforehand. How we know that? We know that basically by the other part that the Almighty God had planned to us is through the messengers, through the prophets, through the books and scriptures to explain to us. And so those prophets, since the patriarch Abraham and even before, came to us to rectify those practices and cults, to rectify those rituals, to sanction them, and then to address all different other common issues. So now the yearning for worship also, it's built inside the human being. So the human being, since the early dawn of history, was looking at himself. He or she did not provide the existence to herself. She or he does not provide the sustenance and all that. So they would think by the Fitrah, with the built-in, that they owe something to another entity, another being that had provided all that to them, to any population. That's why they had that feeling of the need for worship. And so this part is linked to the having religious authorities. So there is a yearning and a seeking the social justice by all the different population. And then they look at the priest, the religious priest, as intercessors and a median between the divine and the creation, and then as representative of that whole, of the high being, of that sublime being, of that superior being with the highest authority, which is the God, that gives and bestow and grant some of those privileges to those, the executive branch of the God, who are the priests. And those serves as like public officials, if you want, in that term, representing the sublime being to enforce the justice code on earth and help the welfare and well-being of the population. If you recall that the old Sumerian tablets and that code of Hammurabi in Mesopotamia a long time, that explain about how to enforce social justice. So in that aspect, also talking about the places of worship, since the early dawn of humanity, the communities and a human being felt the need to build places or houses for the Supreme Being to worship and thank Him, and to deal with some with metaphysics affairs. So you have, for example, for a long time you have the Zaggurats in Mesopotamia. You have the pagodas in China. You have also the, temples in Rome, and you have churches, synagogues, and mosques in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East since that time. So with that in mind, we gonna talk about two main aspects of the Futra before I move to the hereafter and the immortality aspect of the Futra. I told you about two main important philosophical concepts: is the causality and the intentionality. So the causality means, for God the Almighty had built in our brain, in our characteristic as a human being, not to accept anything basically that has a role or that accomplish a role without a purpose. So we said it's purposeful. So what I mean by that is, for any effect there is a cause. So in any process that you see, in any event, in any object or state that contribute to the production of another event or another process or another state or object, this means that what is producing in the first state is the cause, and what's produced is the effect. So, and the effect depend on the cause, right? And the cause is the reason of the existence of the effect. This rule of thumb applies in modern physics, in psychology, in a human being, and it's a fitra, it's a built-in notion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in our brain to have the intellectual and mental capability to reason and ponder upon nature phenomenon and all other philosophical instructions. And you see, if there is not that notion of causality, how you gonna talk about contradiction is not accepted, for example? All those axioms in philosophy are based upon the fitra, the built-in our mind, that we don't accept contradictories. For example, we don't accept that I exist in this place and at the same time I don't exist. Who built this in our mind? Is the Almighty, and this is an innate, is an inbred notion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in us, the causality, and that helped us, a human being, to have consensus about philosophy, about science, and all other related domains. Then the other point or aspect or characteristic of the fitra, or the built-in or innate faculty of our thinking, is the intentionality. What I mean by intentionality, that for any complex system that you see in universe, what is it simple or complex? Basically any organized and synchronized system, from talking about the galaxy, from the macro to the micro to the quantum mechanic, everything that is built and it's organized that way to accomplish a certain role, then what embeds this, what you can conclude, that it is done for a specific purpose. So it is purposeful, and there is an intention in doing that, to form it that way with that complexity to accomplish a specific role or task. So there is an intention. So there is a creator and organizer behind that. There is a mastermind behind that. And this embedded or innate thinking that we have inside ourselves help us to go toward faith. Else there will be complete chaos and no ability in reasoning or discussing those serious matters concerning the existence between the human family, between the human population. So this is a very important aspect of it also. So I will move to the last part. Basically, I probably have to skip a couple parts, which is the yearning toward immortality. That's, I have it as a, first before that, with the seeking social justice through religion, one beautiful thing that I have noticed or I have came across is the word Costas. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about justice, whether it is social justice or other kinds of justice, he used the word Costas, وَزِنُوا بِالْقِسْطَاسِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. And I found that Costas, the origin of the word is Greek. So it was used before Islam. And it's Costos. Costos means coasts, like the coast in English. So, so subhanAllah, that's not the first. There are a lot of words that the Quran used, and they are not Arabic at their origin. Also, from different language, and this proves the universality of the message of the seal of prophets, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the last point is the Fitrah in the yearning toward immortality. So, since the earlier dawn of civilizations, we noticed that human being believes strongly he or she is immortal, and there is a life. There is in the hereafter. So there is life after death. And this idea, you will be amazed to find it, with the Egyptians. And I have a long text from the old Egypt, and amazingly, what they were talking about, the god of the hereafter with the Ma'ad, the name. And in coincidence, you see that in Quran use the word Ma'ad to designate the day of judgment. And then the ancient Egypt, they were talking about Ma'ad when it comes to judgment, to the afterlife. And if you go to a lot of scripture, you will find that in ancient Egypt, they were a lot of texts talking about that, about the code of conduct, about the morality, about how a good citizen should behave, should not alter others' business, should not take another property of somebody else. So you see all those concepts are ubiquitous among all the human family. One of them, for example, if I give you that example, the protective attitude of Imam toward her little ones. That every nation would see that as a good. None would see that as an evil. Now, since the old time also, taking on take somebody else's property in every civilization, since the oldest time, you will see that this is a reference to evil behavior. So all what I'm talking about, those common are those built in because of the fitrah that we have inside us. And I mentioned also about the hereafter that I have the text from the Chinese, ancient Chinese, also that talk about believing in a life after death that was very similar to this word. And even in the ancient Greek, they were believing in the afterlife and the existence of the soul, beside the Romans and other civilizations. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you, Dr. Firas. We appreciate it. I would like to, that since most of our audience here much younger than us and they're youth, and just like to find out if you guys would like to share your thoughts about Ramadan. What are the lessons that you've learned during this month? And if you recall, at the beginning of the month, I shared with you the idea of making goals for Ramadan. And that's what I wanted to do myself, which is make goals. This is what I'm going to accomplish this month. This is what I'm going to work on. And the challenges and the to-do list, to accomplish list, and all of that. And I'm sure that you've done your own as well, and you had your own plans. Anybody would like to share anything with us that that you worked on, that you are working on, and what it means to you? It's not about fasting. Is not about just abstaining from food and water. This is a source of a kind of worship, and as Dr. Firas mentioned, Islam is an intentional religion. We don't do things just to do things. Otherwise, we'll be abstaining from water and food for just health reasons. There are other reasons that we do that. And there's spiritual reasons and inner growth and so forth and so on. Anybody would like to share with us? Any thoughts on your mind that you want to share with us? You don't have to come to the microphone. You can say them from where you are and help us or share with us, because this is how we learn, when we share thoughts from each other. I was talking to my son. He's 14 now. He'll be 15 in June. And I asked him, how do you feel about Ramadan? And he said, I'm hungry. I said, I understand. And I'm sure you're thirsty too. And you like to go back to play tennis. But how do you feel? You're depriving yourself from food, you're depriving yourself from sleep, you're depriving yourself from from water. And it's not easy. And we do all of that because there is some kind of either want to change something in our lives, or there's some kind of a reward. And he thought about it for a while, and he said, well, I need to think about it. And I said, okay, well, you go ahead and think about it and let me know. And the other day he was telling me that he wanted to learn how to be more patient. He wanted to learn how to be more giving. He said, if I know we have food in the fridge, but there are people who don't have food at all in other countries. There are people who maybe have little food. There are people who sleep hungry. I said, where did you hear that? And he said he read it on Google, radiyallahu an. And it's important that he is thinking about it. And again, as Dr. Firas mentioned, Islam is intentional. It's not, we don't just pray to pray. We don't just fast to fast. We don't just do things because it's a habit. It's more than that. Go ahead, please. Yes. Exactly. Absolutely. It's the training, absolutely. It's the training, which is the different season, as you said. And since the microphone is away from you, just wanted to repeat that. It is the different seasons that we have, whether it is Ramadan, whether it is Muharram, whether it is other times of the year in which we evaluate and we take a look. We do that every day, 5 times a day as well, when we pray. I'm not here to lecture you on that, but I only want to share information with you from what I've learned myself. The prayer, the wudu. Sometimes it becomes just a habit, just to do things. I think we need to make it even more meaningful. When we are doing wudu and we take a look at wudu, is the preparation for that meeting with the Lord. We have an appointment with the Lord, and this is why we do wudu. Wudu is when we put the water in our hand, we'll look at it, and the idea is to be as pure as this water in our hand. That's the whole idea. It's entering that state of purity before our meeting with the Lord. And what we do, we wash our hands and arms, our face, our feet, okay? And namsah, we pass our hands on our feet. And the intention here is that they have to be tahir. And these are the things that we could walk into something that was not supposed to walk, or face something that was not supposed to face, look at something we're not supposed to look at, or say something we're not supposed to say. So this is the time for us to prepare for our meeting with the Lord, for us to really say, I did this, I did that, and I'm not going to do it again. When we say Al-Fatiha, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we are making a pledge. We're going to be on the straight path. What's a straight path? Straight path is that we're going to be as good as possible. This is what Islam is all about, is we're going to be good. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Taqwa. It's the piety. That's the goal. The goal is we want to be as pious as possible. The prayer and the fasting and the other rituals, those are the tools that we use them to make us that good. I was reading a book the other day on habits. This is what they use for athletes, specifically football players. These are the people who go 6 hours a day to train, doing the same thing every day, doing the same thing. And this is how they get good. And this is how they get better. And this is what makes them get $40 million deals, because they're going to be on the field playing football at that level. And if they don't do these mundane exercises, I've been on that field to write about it, and I've seen these people doing so much mundane exercises for 6 hours, and you look at it, I got tired just looking at them. But it's those mundane exercises that make them who they are, and they make them as good as they are. Somebody could say, well, I pray every day, it's the same thing. Well, yes, it is. But at the same time, this is the tool that's going to make us better. The fasting, a whole month of fasting, this is the tool that's going to train us, teach us discipline, okay? What we learned during the pandemic, staying home, focusing on ourselves a little bit, on our families, giving a break to nature. Did you notice when there was a lockup? We could see more stars. The air was better. And this is what we do. That's once a month, 1 month out of the year, we just slow down a little bit. Let's think about things. Let's give nature a break. This is one of the benefits. I remember one person asking me, well, what I do is during the day to waste the time or to pass the time, I go walk around the mall. I said, well, this is not fasting about. It's not fasting. You don't fast just so you can pass the time until it's time to eat. Fasting is you're going to take that time to work on yourself, to read the Quran, to learn the Quran, to learn who you are, to learn how you can be a better person. And this is something we all need to learn, including myself. And I'm not standing here to tell you that I'm better than you or anything else. No. These are the things I work on all the time. And it is work in progress. It never ends. 2 years ago, my son, he attended one of those sessions on Islam. And when he came back and I said, Yusuf, what did you learn? He goes, well, Islam is about if we don't pray, if we don't fast, we're going to go to hell. I said, well, that's not Islam. That's not Islam. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, we live in a country that is not totally Muslim, or predominantly Muslim. If somebody asks you when you're at work or you're in school, if somebody asks you, why are you a Muslim? What are you going to say? He goes, well, because we pray, we fast, we don't eat pork. I said, I understand. These are the rituals. But why are you a Muslim? And I said, I want to share something with you that is really important, and that's the fact that Islam is defined by several characteristics of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What are they? What are the characteristics of Prophet Muhammad? He was a sadiq al-amin, trustworthy and truthful person. These are the two things, important things. For us to be Muslims, we have to have these two characteristics. It's not about, prayer is a mandated ritual, but it is about, if we're not going to reach that stage of purity, stage of being truthful, stage of being trustworthy and peacefulness. That's what Islam is. It's submission to the Lord. Submission to the Lord. This is what it's about. It's about being peaceful with yourself, with your community, with your family, with everyone. And if we can't do that, we can't call ourselves Muslims. I know a lot of people who wear hijab, pray, come to the mosque, and fast. And if you try to get near them, they'll bite your head off. That's not an Islamic attitude. وَمَا بُعِثْتُ إِلَّا لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The best of morals. What's the difference between good morals and the best of morals? Somebody says hello to you, you say hello back to them. The best of morals, even if they don't say hello to you, you say hello to them. The best of morals. And if we're not going to get there, we still have a lot to work on. The beauty of Islam is it's this autonomous relationship between the person and the Lord. You don't need anybody in between. Some other religions, you have to have a priest, you have to have a rabbi, you have to have somebody in between to mediate for you. In Islam, you don't need that. You can pray anywhere. This does not dilute the importance of a mosque. Mosque is very important in the community. And Imam is very important in the community because that's the person we go back to if we have questions. We don't have the time to know everything about the faith. This is why we turn to someone, a scholar like Imam Ilahi, for example, because he's the one who guides us and teaches us the things that we don't know. But the actual faith, it's between me and the Lord. This is where the faith is. This is why it's called faith. I believe in the Lord. Under what? Under something called Tawheed. La ilaha illallah. And we say it many times. Sometimes when I think about it, La ilaha illallah, what does that mean? This means that the Lord is the most important thing in my life. And everything I do is in the path of the Lord. And this is what it means. What are the attributes of the Lord? The just, the merciful, and there's 99 of them. And whatever I do, it has to be in the path of the Lord. This is what La ilaha illallah is. This is what Tawheed means. It's not just I say the phrase and I'm a Muslim. It's not enough. It's really not enough. You know, again, I want to keep bringing my son to this, and he and I have discussions all the time, and he asked me, I asked him though, you know what worship is? And he says, yeah, prayer. I said, well, it's more than that. You know, worship is that you worship the Lord. That means the Lord is the most important thing in your life. It's the keel that guides your ship. Some of you who know how ships work, there's at the bottom, there's this big weight on sailboats to keep the ship straight. And that's called a keel. And the keel, this is where what guides you through life, is that you guide yourself in the path of the Lord. Sirat al-Mustaqim. This is what La ilaha illallah means. We have the responsibility to understand these things because we live in a country that is not a Muslim majority country. You know, it makes us a de facto expert on our culture, on our faith, and people gonna ask us, why is this? Why do you wear hijab? You know, isn't it hot today? Why do you wear hijab? You need to be able to answer that. Why do you pray? Why do you fast? We have to know these things. It's very important to know them. It's very important to know them so we can teach our children, we can teach our friends. These are very important things. And again, to go back to the word worship, you know, some people say someone worships money, someone worships hobbies, whatever it is. That means all they think about is that thing. We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that what we think about the most? Ask yourself, how often do you think about the Lord? How often do you think when you're doing something, you say, I'm doing it in the path of the Lord, which means it has to be done the right way, it has to be done the correct way, it has to be done the most merciful, the most loving. Now, this is one of the most underestimated concepts that we suffer from, which is the lack of love to ourselves, to our families. You know, and I know, and it happens in every family. People don't like each other. We have a lot of issues. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems in our community, the youth, drugs, so forth and so on. How are we going to solve those? This goes back to what I started with, which is we can come to the mosque and work on these things and form committees and talk about them. This is in the path of the Lord. During the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they used to come to the mosque and address these issues. You know, place like Islamic House of Wisdom, for example. We have a great leader here who is willing to work with you any way possible. We come to him, we say, how can we solve that? I can't tell you really how many times we've had meetings here to talk about the drug issue in our community. And what can we do for the youth? How can we explain the faith to them so they can be not just Muslims by statistics. They can be intentional Muslims. They know who they are, and they know that they can explain why they're Muslims. If we can't explain it, you know, if you become a doctor, you can't explain why you're a doctor. Are you really a doctor? No, you're not. We have to know that. Faith is the most important thing in our lives. In my life, faith is number one. My health is number two. Family is number three. Because if I'm not healthy, I can't serve my family. But to go back to what? Faith is number one. Otherwise, I would have never said La ilaha illallah. I may have inherited Islam from my family. My family instilled in me this great faith. But then I had my responsibility to understand my faith. It is my responsibility to know who I am and to know why I'm a Muslim and why I fast and why I pay khums and zakat and why I do all of these things that a Muslim does. Now, if we lived in a country where all Muslims, we don't have to answer these questions, but we still need to know. because we don't want to be led blind into something, you know. And one of the things that we always make a mistake of is that we stand here and start talking about reciting history, what this guy did to this guy, and how they fought this and how they hated this. We shouldn't really get involved in that. We need to understand history. But understanding Islam is understanding the tenets of Islam, understanding the purpose of Islam, understanding what it means. You know, this is something very important. And we have happened to be very fortunate. The other day, someone was asking me a really good question about how do we learn all of these things, in which did we learn it from the Prophet, and who do we learn it from? Well, we are so fortunate that we had trainers over the years that have taught us the Islam. For example, prophets received revelations, wahi, and then through revelations, they shared with us what those revelations are. And then the Prophet Muhammad was the seal of the prophets, and he's the last one who launched Islam. Islam started with Abraham. And then the Prophet Muhammad launched Islam and completed the mission. Now we have this new, fairly new system. And some of you who work in companies, when there is a new system, what do they send us? Trainers. We need people who can train us on this new system. Who are these people? These are the Imams. And the Imams, those are the people who have divine knowledge. These are the people who can train us on this religion. You know, can you imagine that the Lord is just going to give us this book and this religion and then say, you go figure it out? We're not going to be able to figure it out. We need somebody who understands it. The Prophet couldn't be with us all that time because he did die. But somebody else took that job to explain to us what the religion is. And if you take a look at the Imams, the 12 Imams, each one had a role. Each one had a specific role to teach us. And I don't have time, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time today to really explain to you each one role. Maybe another time we'll do that. But, you know, some of these roles, Imam Hassan, Imam Ali, Imam Hussein, you know, each one played a role. Imam Zayn al-Abidin. You know, the West talks about, which is what established in the 30s or 40s, human rights. Imam Zayn al-Abidin taught us human rights 1400 years ago. Do we know them? Do we work for them? Al-Huquq, Risalat al-Huquq. We need to read that. Imam Zayn al-Abidin taught us how to talk to the Lord. And this is very important. Sahif al-Sajadiyya, you know, the supplications that we read, most of it. Because he knows how to do that. There are a lot of du'as out there, but we need to be very careful. We follow what Imam Zayn al-Abidin taught us. We follow what Imam Ja'far Sadiq taught us. We follow what Imam Hussein taught us. The important things. We follow what Imam Hassan taught us. And then Madinatul, when the Prophet said, "Ana Madinatul Ilmi wa Aliyyun babuha," I'm the city of knowledge, and if you enter that city, you can enter it through Imam Ali because of his knowledge. Because of his knowledge. It's all there for us. The 3 books, we have the Quran, we have Nash al-Balagha, and we have Sahif al-Sajadiyya. How much do we know about these? What does it say about the Quran? We have to know it as we know our children. Then Nash al-Balagha, then Sahif al-Sajadiyya. Then every Imam had a role to play to teach us something. And that knowledge was passed on to, you know, Maraja and those who are study the faith all the time. This is what we need to do. We need to take a look at, during these days and during this month, who we are and why we are Muslims, and are we really not perfecting, but are we really using the knowledge we learn to put it into use? Is there any implementation? You know, what is it to say the Fatiha? You know, what does it mean? I'm making this pledge. We do it 5 times a day. We say to the Lord, I'm going to make a pledge. I'm going to be on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that. And the Lord said, well, you have 5 times to remind yourself of doing that. And at the end of the night before we sleep, it doesn't hurt to take 5 minutes and think about it. Did I do that? Did I really do that? And now we have a whole month to think about it. And then other times of the year to think about it as well. And during Salat al-Layl and during the extra stuff that we do. You know, one of the things I was reading the other day is that most people who convert to Islam in America, they convert to Islam because they read the Quran. It's one book. They read it, they convert to Islam. 90% of them who leave Islam after that is because they're unhappy with how Muslims behave. It is our behavior that we need really to look at and see, are we truly, really, truly ambassadors of this faith? And we can't be those ambassadors if we don't understand the faith. We need to understand it. We owe it to ourselves. You know, if I can't answer why I'm a Muslim and why do I what I do, something is wrong. You don't want to be led blind. Why? What did the Lord say to the Prophet? Iqra. We are the people of knowledge. We are the people of knowledge. Iqra. The most important thing in our faith is what? Is knowledge. Read. Learn. And as I said before in previous times, Islam is about change. We can change. And we can get there. And trust me, it's not easy. Change is one of the most difficult things. I go through it every day. Can you imagine how difficult it is to concentrate during prayer? And I asked someone the other day, and someone, who's very well knowledgeable in the faith, and I said, listen, sometimes I'm praying and my mind drifts, and he says, it's work in progress. It's work in progress. Imam Khomeini wrote a great book about the salikin ila salat. The word salikin is the going on the path to something. This is what salat is. You're going on the path to something. We come to the prayer and we have all of these luggage on our back, or this baggage, this and that, and what happened today, and work and family, children and friends and wife and husband and whatever it is. And then we want to shed all of this stuff, just shed them and shed them and shed them, so we feel lighter and lighter and lighter, so we can closer to the Lord. Do you know how difficult that is? It's very difficult. I don't care what people say. And if people tell you it's not difficult, they're not telling you the truth. It's very difficult. This is an appointment with the Lord. If you go to have an appointment with your boss and you sit there, even if it is a half an hour, all your attention is there. And now I'm with the Lord, who is the biggest boss ever there is. And sometimes I can't concentrate. I have to work on it. Just like Imam Ali says, عَدِمَ اللَّهُ فِي نُفُوسِهِمْ فَصَغُرَ مَدُونَ. That means, and this goes back to Tawheed. That means the Lord is the most important thing on their minds. Everything else, it dwarfs everything else. Everything else is so small comparing to the Lord said that. And that goes back to what Tawheed means. And this is only one aspect of Usul al-Din for us Muslims, as you well know. What are Usul al-Din? Tawheed is the first one. Tawheed is a big thing. We need to really understand what Tawheed is. It's not just saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. That's the technical part. The implementation is, we have to know what Tawheed is. In the path of the Lord. And then what we have, leadership. Imam al-Nabuwah. Then what we have, justice. If all of these things we're doing don't lead to justice, what good are they? What good are they? And then al-Ma'ad, which is we're going to be accountable and responsible to that. And I'm going to leave it to there. I didn't mean to give a lecture. I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much for attending. and we'll see you tomorrow. بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Please don't forget us with your prayers.